After promising to dismantle their police department, the Minneapolis City Council is approving an additional $6.4 million to recruit more police. Residents citing longer response time and an increase in violent crime and concerns after city leaders pledged to reimagine public safety in the wake of George Floyd's death last year. And some police reform advocates want to leave the fate of the police department up to voters. Joining me now, former NYPD Lieutenant and Pace University law enforcement professor Darrin Porcher. Darrin, good morning to you. It's not coming as a surprise to many that after, even in Minnesota, the police were defunded, they're being refunded, because during this period, people were saying, we need law and order, we need security, and you're going to realize the impact of that. And of course, now it's happening.
Absolutely. There was no plausible plan or solution that was put in place when the vote to defund the police came to fruition. As a result of that, what we had was somewhat of a disconnect between the members of the city council and the actual crime epidemic that was plaguing that community of Minneapolis. The citizens of Minneapolis actually sued the city council for failing to put forth an agenda of public safety for that community. In addition to that, the Department of Justice was willing to sit with officials that were part of the city council to provide a level of resource to that community. However, the city council was not willing to sit with the Department of Justice. That being said, the community experienced a meteoric rise in violence, and there was no solution. And they subsequently led to attempting to hire police officers from outside agencies to assist in the crime epidemic that was plaguing that community.
And Brian, you're from Minnesota. You know, we talked about instead of defunding the police, you should, fund them more, even when this all started, so that they can, train better. They can have access to things that will make them stronger instead of trying to take away from them. Your thoughts of what's happening here and how this had to play out? Yeah,
Darrin hit it right here. I mean, he's talking about the needs in the community and then whether the city's providing a viable plan to meet that. And the issue right away on all of this was, what are you talking about when you're talking about defund police? They said, no, it's not a reduction in public safety. It's a change in how we do it. But businesses,
right?
But businesses on the ground said, no, it's a total reduction in public safety. I can't go back into my business. I can't open the doors again. So as I think about this with Darrin, my question, Darrin, to you is, when you bring up the economic angle, especially this summer, you were always derided. That's a low concern. That's not a big issue. You shouldn't be focused on property. But the fact is, property is people's livelihoods, Darrin. Talk a little bit about what this has meant in these communities to not have reliable police coverage there to deal with the things that keep businesses' doors shut.
When we look to the social contract, it affords citizens protections by government. That comes in the element of police, and that has subsequently been fractured. And there's been a lot of confusion in connection with defunding the police as opposed to a reform of police. There should be more of a reform and a revolution in police training to assist that community. And that's where the confusion is coming to place in connection with the city council. So as a result of the defund police movement that's been driven by a lot of the social network, that is where the city council has subsequently been plagued or confused, as opposed to implementing a level of reform and police accountability and more of a transparency, and that just hasn't happened. So as a result, we see a disconnect, and the communities of Minneapolis have subsequently been under siege.
And Shayna comes from a family that's affiliated with law enforcement. I'm curious, Shayna, to get your thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, so my dad's a retired police officer. My brother-in-law is active officer in the city of Worcester, Massachusetts, and my cousin is on the force in Hartford. So I talked to them a lot about this issue, and it all comes down, in their opinion, to proper de-escalation training and making sure that officers are truly prepared for the job. My question for Darrin is, as somebody who was on the force and for somebody who's kind of looking at it from the outside now, police leadership, have they put any ideas in place on how they can help improve the situation internally? And what are officers saying on how they think potential solutions could be to help bridge this gap in between the community and the police force that's sworn to protect them?
I don't believe that the police practitioners were a part of the solution in connection with what the city council was looking to introduce. You need to have both components. You need to have the elected officials and the police practitioners that coalesce behind a strategy. It's only coming from politicians. So as a result, as it's subsequently failing, you need to introduce those practitioners. I think supervision is a tremendous component of this. In addition to that, I believe professional development needs to marry into it as well. But the elected officials are not seeing that. So as a result, we see an epic failure in policy that's moving forward.
Darrin Porcher, we're going to have to leave it there, but we thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thanks for having me.